Picture this. You are part of a massive scientific experiment. You're one of nearly 61,000 people, and you are being closely watched for nearly 8 years. Sounds a bit unsettling, especially when you realize what the scientists are actually tracking, how much time you have left, when you will die. But don't panic. You don't have to go through this, because researchers from Monash University, Harvard, and the University of Manchester already did it for you, to help you live longer, with a meaningfully lower risk of fatal diseases. In this video, you're going to learn about one of the most underestimated factors in human health. It's something most people have never tracked, and it's more accurate at predicting your risk of dying than how many hours you spend in bed. The craziest part? It all comes down to whether your head hits the pillow and leaves it at the exact same time every single day. For a long time, we assumed that longevity came down to diet, the total amount of rest you get, or the supplements you take. And while that framework still matters, a 2024 paper, featured in the medical journal called Sleep, the flagship publication of the Sleep Research Society, found a factor that rewrites the rules. The paper's title is itself a finding. Sleep regularity is a stronger predictor of mortality risk than sleep duration. Here are the numbers from the data. People who scored highest on timing consistency had between 20 and 48% lower risk of dying from any cause, up to 57% lower risk of dying from cardiometabolic disease. That's the category covering heart disease, stroke, and conditions like type 2 diabetes, up to 39% lower cancer mortality. To put that into perspective, in the most dramatic comparisons, we're looking at cutting the risk of dying almost in half. If there were a pill that produced numbers like these, you would have heard about it a long time ago. Let's look at what made this analysis exceptional, because the quality of the evidence matters just as much as the conclusions. The team enrolled nearly 61,000 participants from the UK Biobank and followed their mortality records for nearly 8 years. And these habits weren't measured through questionnaires or flawed human memory. They were recorded objectively through research-grade actigraphy devices worn on the wrist. Keep in mind, this data was collected at a time when most people had no concept of seriously tracking their own sleep. Today, nearly everyone has a device on their wrist, and monitoring your biology has become part of everyday life. But back then, that culture simply didn't exist yet. This cohort was ahead of its time, and it laid the foundation for what we now understand about the long-term cost of irregular sleep patterns. Overall, the project generated over 10 million hours of measured data. So what actually separated the healthiest group from the highest risk group in this massive sample? The most consistent group, the top 20%, fell asleep and woke up within roughly a 1-hour window on most of their recorded nights. People with the most irregular sleep had that window expand to approximately 3 hours, with their schedule shifting substantially from one night to the next, with no stable reference point. And it was in that chronic 3-hour drift, repeating week after week, where the real danger spiked. There's also something in the findings about total hours in bed that runs against most of our intuitions. For people sleeping under 8 hours a night, getting more rest actually improves their consistency. But the moment that average crosses roughly the 7.8 hour mark, the trend flips. Their schedule becomes significantly less regular. The reason becomes clear when you look at how we actually live. Most people try to manage their physical energy like a financial debt. They run a massive sleep deficit Monday through Friday and try to pay off that physiological loan in one lump sum by sleeping in until noon on Sunday. But your biology doesn't run on credit. It runs on a strict 24-hour cycle. If you normally wake up at 6 in the morning for work, but sleep until 9 on Sunday to catch up, your body doesn't register that as recovery. It registers it as a 3-hour time zone change. You are essentially forcing your internal clock onto an airplane, flying from New York to Los Angeles every single weekend, and then flying back on Monday morning without ever leaving your bedroom. The extra hours aren't the problem. The invisible travel required to chase them is. This biological frequent flyer mileage actually has a name. Way back in 2006, chronobiologist Till Roeneberg described the systematic mismatch between your biological clock and your life schedule as social jet lag. It's the weekly gap between when your body naturally wants to shut down and when the alarm forces you awake. And twice a year in the US, daylight saving time does exactly that to everyone at once, a 1-hour forced shift that your biology didn't choose. Even when your own routine is solid, that external change still lands. The same logic that applies to your daily schedule applies here too. When a time shift is coming, easing into it gradually over the days before the change gives your internal clock the runway it needs to adapt smoothly rather than absorb a sudden jolt. What the 2024 WindRED study finally measured at a massive scale was the long-term mortality cost of this chronic mismatch. To understand why this timing disruption produces such massive health effects, we need to look at what the body's internal clock actually does. In 2017, the Nobel Prize in Medicine was awarded for the discovery that every cell in your body carries a molecular timing mechanism encoded in its genes. There is a master pacemaker sitting in the hypothalamus, deep at the base of your brain. It's called the SCN. This master clock needs one reliable input above all others to stay calibrated, a consistent, predictable signal of when your daily rest begins and when it ends. When that timing is locked in, the brain sends a synchronized broadcast to the rest of the body. Your heart gets the signal to regulate your cardiovascular rhythm. Your liver knows exactly when to switch its metabolic gears. Your immune cells prepare for daytime defense, and your hormone glands regulate your stress response. Everything runs in absolute sync. But when those moments become unpredictable, when your schedule shifts by 2 or 3 hours from one day to the next, the master clock doesn't experience that as flexibility. It experiences it as circadian disruption. Think of it as a world-class orchestra. Every section plays from the exact same conductor's tempo. Change that tempo by 3 hours on unpredictable days, and the musicians don't get a break. They lose their coordination entirely. Instead of a symphony, you get noise. And in the body, that noise shows up as metabolic dysfunction, elevated inflammation, and systems that are supposed to run in rhythm falling entirely out of sync. If you caught the previous videos on this channel, you already know exactly what breaks down. In our first video, we explored why your brain shuts down at 3:30 in the afternoon, and what happens to your cognitive fuel when this clock loses its anchor. In our second video, we mapped the morning cortisol surge that resets your stress resilience for the entire day. Both of those critical systems run on the exact same clock we are talking about right now. These aren't isolated topics. They are gears in the same machine. Understanding one makes the others exponentially easier to optimize. I'll leave links to those videos in the description and on the screen at the end of this video. So what does all this evidence actually tell you to do? The authors address this directly. Extending total duration is genuinely hard, and most people's obligations simply don't allow for more hours in bed. But anchoring the timing is a different kind of decision. You choose a bedtime and a wake time that work with the life you actually have. Not an idealized fantasy routine, but your reality. And then you hold both within roughly a 1-hour window. You don't have to be perfect. The healthiest people in this analysis didn't have flawless records. They simply kept their schedule within a 1-hour window on most days. That is the goal. And the best part? It requires no change to how much you sleep at all. Even if full consistency isn't possible for you right now, every time you narrow that window, you are moving toward a longer, healthier life. Before you go, I have a couple of questions for you. Which day of the week does your schedule usually fall apart? And how do you physically and mentally feel the day after that disruption? Don't just leave a one-word answer. Describe your situation in the comments. I genuinely love reading them, and it's a great place to share experiences with the rest of the community. We read every single comment, and they help us see what you're interested in, so we can make new videos. In the next video, we will continue to systematically break down your body's hidden processes to help you optimize your biology and live a healthier, longer, and more interesting life. See you next time.